Hello and welcome to my channel. As you can tell by the title, today's video is going to be me recommending you books with queer storylines or with queer people in them. Just queer books in general, because it's Pride Month and we should all be proud to be gay. So I'm going to split this video into 3 sections. Books on my bookshelf that I've read that have queer characters in them or queer storylines, and then books that I'm excited to read that I have either on my bookshelf or that I want to get a copy of very soon because I'm very excited about reading them. And then thirdly, I have a queer classics section because there are some classics that are queer, and so I thought I would recommend you some. Okay, do we all agree on that? Great, you have no say in the matter other than to watch this video or to not watch this video. But anyway, let's get straight into it. These are in no particular order, I just wrote them down in a list as they came to me, so that's the order I'm sticking with. And the first book that I have is Out of Love by Hazel. This is a love story told in reverse. So you start at the end of their relationship where our main character's ex-boyfriend has come to pick up his belongings that is at their shared flat, which is now only her flat. So he has come to pick up his belongings, and then you move all the way back to I believe it's their first date, or whenever they meet. But so that's the main sort of plot of the story. And as you may have heard by me explaining this this relationship to you, the relationship is not queer, but the main character is bisexual, and she gets to explore that sexuality throughout the book a few different times. So I thought I'd include it on this list. The second book recommendation that I have for you that's on my bookshelf, I don't have the physical copy of. I have lent it to a friend to read, so I can't hold it up for you, but I will put a picture of it on the screen. It's When Women Were Dragons. I have spoken about this book a few times now on this channel, but basically the storyline is, it is set in the 1950s in some alternate version of, I think it's Wisconsin in the US, and in this alternate reality there are times when women, mainly women, transform into dragons and sort of fly away from their homes, abandon their families, and cause havoc in the communities that they used to live in, and they disappear to some place where nobody knows where they go to. And sometimes they disappear forever, and sometimes they come back, but they don't come back as humans, they come back as dragons, and everybody's afraid of them. And also it's very taboo to talk about the dragons because according to the government they don't exist, and the dragoning, as they call it, when the people turn into dragons, never happened. So our main character is a young girl, and you follow her throughout her maybe pre-teens until when she's an adult, and her aunt, I'm not giving any spoilers because this is all on the back of the book, her aunt turns into a dragon and disappears, and so her family sort of has to reckon with how they're going to deal with this whole situation, and how they're going to move forward from here. But the reason I'm recommending this book to you is because the main character is gay, she's a lesbian, and her aunt who disappears is also a lesbian. And so you kind of get to see the relationships of both of them over the course of the book. The young girl's first time she ever falls in love with another girl, how that unfolds, how their families react to the things, and also later on in the book, but I don't want to spoil anything for you, there's a polyamorous relationship as well. So that's why this is on my book recommendation list. I'm not very good at describing the plots of things. The next book I want to recommend to you is a book I read really maybe 5 years ago by now, or 4 years ago. I don't remember. Anyway, it's The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers, and there's no really easy way to describe this plot of this book to you, but essentially it's about a crew on a spaceship, a multi-species crew, so there's like alien characters, there's human kind of characters, and they're all on the spaceship together, and their main job throughout this book is to tunnel a wormhole to a distant planet. That's why it's called The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, but a distant planet that is sort of at odds with the rest of the universe. They don't really have much to do with the other planets and the other species. They sort of keep to themselves, and they're really angry, and this crew on the spaceship is tasked with tunneling a wormhole to get to that planet so that the other people from like the middle of the well, not the middle of the universe, but like the place where all of the different species get together, like the whole meeting place. I can't remember what it's called, but so that they can get to that planet far quicker than if they were to go the normal long way, all the way around the whole entire universe to get to them. One of the characters in this book could be probably classified as non-binary or gender fluid, actually both, because the species that this character is a part of all start out life as one gender. I can't remember if it's male or female, but I think it's female. They all start out as one gender, and then at a certain point they switch to the opposite gender, and then at a later stage in their life still they become sort of a plural being. So they have kind of two sentiences inside of their minds from some stage in their life, and they stop referring to themselves as any gender. They become non-binary and they start referring to themselves as they. There's a non-binary character. Also, two of the female crew members, from two different species, have a sort of relationship-ish. And I say relationship-ish because they're not actually attracted to each other in a romantic sense, but they sort of come together near the end of the book because they want to offer each other companionship and sort of a more physical relationship, not necessarily an emotional one, and like give each other physical affection. So they're kind of like friends with benefits. That's that recommendation. And then the last book on my bookshelf that I have to recommend to you is I, Mona Lisa. This is one of my favorite books I've read so far this year. So this is a fictional biography of the painting Mona Lisa. So it's not real, obviously, but through Mona Lisa's sort of recounting of her life, she describes a lot of Leonardo da Vinci's life. And in this book, Leonardo da Vinci is portrayed as having been gay. We don't have any actual evidence to concretely say that he was gay in real life, but a lot of scholars and academics who have studied him and his life agree that it most likely is that he was gay. And in this book he is portrayed as having been gay. And so you get to sort of see his relationships with his helpers. I don't remember what they call them, but like the people who helped him paint were all men. And he had relationships with several of them. So you get to see that. There's also a sort of another relationship-ish between Mona Lisa and another one of Leonardo's paintings, Leda and the Swan, which unfortunately doesn't actually exist anymore. It was burned, I think. But there's a sort of relationship between them or it evolves, because when Leonardo is first painting Leda, Mona Lisa feels maternal towards her, but then once she's complete, they sort of become more like friends, and then they create a dream house together in their own dreams, where they go to when situations are less than ideal. And when they visit the dream house, That's the only time in the book when there is romance between the two of them, or overt romance between the two of them. But it's a sort of relationship. So I wanted to mention it as well. Two of these books are on my bookshelf, and then the other two I don't own a copy of. The first one of them being Women by Chloe Caldwell. I also hauled this one recently because I recently bought it from the bookshop that I work at. But I don't really know what happened in this book because I only found out about this book when I found it in the bookshop. So I'm just going to read to you the blurb. It says, a young woman moves from the countryside to the city. Inexplicably, inexorably, and immediately, she falls in love with another woman for the first time in her life. Finn is 19 years older than her, wears men's clothes, has a cocky smirk of a smile, and a long-term girlfriend. With precision, wit, and tenderness, Women charts the frenzy and the fallout of love. So, there's that. And I'm very excited to read it, mostly because it's a short book, but also just because I'm interested in the storyline and to see where it goes and how Chloe writes this relationship. Then the next book that I don't have a physical copy of, I have the ebook of it, but it is Red, White and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. I know, I'm very late to this train. I didn't really have any ambitions to ever read this book, but then my best friend told me that it's one of her favorite books of all time. I think it's her second favorite book of all time. She's very precise about these things. I could not tell you my favorite book of all time. I am not that decisive. But it's one of her favorite books of all time, so I thought I would give it a try. So I'm going to read to you the blurb on my laptop. First son, Alex Claremont Diaz, is the closest thing to a prince this side of the Atlantic. With his intrepid sister and the Veep's genius granddaughter, they are the White House trio, a beautiful millennial marketing strategy for his mother, President Ellen Claremont. Feels like a tongue twister. International socialite duties do have downsides, namely when photos of a confrontation with his longtime nemesis Prince Henry at a royal wedding leak to the tabloids and threaten American-British relations. The plan for damage control, staging a fake friendship between the first son and the prince. As President Claremont kicks off her re-election bid, Alex finds himself hurtling into a secret relationship with Henry that could derail the campaign and upend the two nations. What is worth the sacrifice? How do you do all the good you can do? How do you do all the good you can do? And most importantly, how will history remember you? So, there you have it. That's all I can tell you about this book because I don't know anything else. Then the next book that I'm excited to read has also been out for a really long time, and people have been singing its praises for so long. But finally, I'm going to get around to reading it at some point when I can find a copy of this book. I don't own a copy of this. It's The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. I'm lying to you. I'm so used to saying that I didn't even... I read the title and then still said it wrong. It's because I wrote down The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle on my notes. It's not. It's The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Yes. I'm going to just read you the blurb and then talk to you a little bit more about it after. Aging and reclusive Hollywood movie icon Evelyn Hugo is finally ready to tell the truth about her glamorous and scandalous life. But when she chooses unknown magazine reporter Monique Grant for the job, no one is more astounded than Monique herself. Why her? Why now? Monique is not exactly on top of the world. Her husband has left her and her professional life is going nowhere. Regardless of why Evelyn has selected her to write her biography, Monique is determined to use this opportunity to jumpstart her career. Summoned to Evelyn's luxurious apartment, Monique listens in fascination as the actress tells her story. From making her way to Los Angeles in the 1950s to her decision to leave show business in the 80s, and of course the 7 husbands along the way, Evelyn unspools a tale of ruthless ambition, unexpected friendship, and a great forbidden love. Monique begins to feel a very real connection to the legendary star, but as Evelyn's story nears its conclusion, it becomes clear that her life intersects with Monique's own in tragic and irreversible ways. Okay, so from that, I mean, she did say a great forbidden love, but not to spoil anything for anybody, but this was spoiled for me by one of my friends who has read this book and really loved it. One of the husbands was a wife. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say. Moving on to the newest addition to this list, because I only found out about it a few days ago when I was listening to the book podcast that I listen to often, Books Unbound with Ariel Bissett and Raylene LeMay. I know I have spoken about this podcast so often, but they were playing a game on the podcast, on the episode that I was listening to, and the game was for Ariel to guess the plot of the story based on the covers of books based on the covers of the books that Raylene had chosen for her to guess. And one of the books that she mentioned was Big Swiss by Jen Beagin, and as soon as I heard the plot of the story, I knew I had to read this book because it sounds so interesting. Greta lives with her friend Sabine in an ancient Dutch farmhouse in Hudson, New York. She spends her days transcribing therapy sessions for a sex coach who calls himself Om. She becomes infatuated with his newest client, a repressed married woman she affectionately refers to Big Swiss, since she's tall, stoic, and originally from Switzerland. They both have dark histories, but Big Swiss chooses to remain unattached to her suffering while Greta continues to be tortured by her past. One day, Greta recognizes Big Swiss's voice at the dog park. In a panic, she introduces herself with a fake name and they quickly become enmeshed. Although Big Swiss is unaware of Greta's true identity, Greta has never been more herself with anyone. Bold, outlandish, and filled with irresistible characters, Big Swiss is both a love story and also a deft examination of infidelity, mental health, sexual stereotypes, and more, from an amazingly talented, one-of-a-kind voice in contemporary fiction. So there's that. When I heard the plot of this story, it immediately made me thought, what? I can't even speak today. It immediately made me think of the series Gypsy, which is on Netflix. I don't know if it's on Netflix everywhere, but it's on Netflix in South Africa. Starring Naomi Watts, Sophie Cookson, Billy Crudup, and Lucy Boynton. It also sort of follows a similar storyline in that Naomi Watts plays a character who's a therapist, who, as people know, therapists are not supposed to get involved in their clients' lives outside of the therapy sessions. But Naomi's character just can't help herself, and she goes and meets people from her clients' lives under a false name without her clients knowing. And then one of her clients keeps talking about his ex-girlfriend. So Naomi's character goes to the coffee shop where his ex-girlfriend lives, and they have an affair, sort of. I mean, yeah, they do have an affair because Naomi's character is married. And when I heard the plot of Big Swiss, I was like, this sounds very familiar to Gypsy, but also very different, but it just reminded me a little bit of it. If you want to check that out, I was not planning on recommending movies and TV series in this thing, but there you have it. There's a series for you to watch. It is very weird, and also it made me very upset at the end, but if you want to, there's that option. I will admit I haven't read any of these, but they're all on my list, and they will one day be read. So starting off, we've got Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. Set in the contemporary Paris of American expatriates, liaisons, and violence, a young man finds himself caught between desire and conventional morality. James Baldwin's brilliant narrative delves into the mystery of loving with a sharp, probing imagination, and he creates a moving, highly controversial story of death and passion that reveals the unspoken complexities of the heart. Doesn't really tell you much of what happens in the book, but that's the description I found on Goodreads of this book. Then the next classic we've got is Orlando by Virginia Woolf. Virginia Woolf's Orlando, and then an aanhalingstekens. I'm gonna leave that in the video. The longest and most charming love letter in literature playfully constructs the figure of Orlando as the fictional embodiment of Woolf's close friend and lover, Vita Sackville West. Spanning 3 centuries, the novel opens as Orlando, a young nobleman in Elizabeth's England, I'm assuming this is Elizabeth I, awaits a visit from the Queen and traces his experience with first love as England under James I lies locked in the embrace of the Great Frost. At the midpoint of the novel, Orlando, now an ambassador in Constantinople, wakes up to find that he is a woman, and the novel indulges in farce and irony to consider the roles of women in the 18th and 19th centuries. As the novel ends in 1928, a year consonant with full suffrage for women, Orlando, now a wife and mother, stands poised at the brink of a future that holds new hope and promise for women. The next book I have is The Color Purple by Alice Walker, another classic. Set in the deep American South between the wars, The Color Purple is the tale of Celie, a young black girl born into poverty and segregation. Raped repeatedly by a man she calls father, she has 2 children taken away from her. He is separated from her beloved sister Nettie and is trapped into an ugly marriage. But then she meets the glamorous Shug Avery and Magic Maker, a woman who has taken charge of her own destiny. Gradually, Celie discovers the power and joy of her own spirit, freeing her from her past and reuniting her with those she loves. So there's that. And then the last classic I have read, so I did lie to you, I have read one of these classics. It is The Price of Salt by Patricia Highsmith, but she wrote it under the pseudonym Claire Morgan, because at the time her publisher didn't want her to publish this book under her own name for reasons. It was those times when being gay was not an okay thing to be in public. It is also the book upon which the movie Carol is based, which I have also seen and I have also read the script of. But here's The Price of Salt. Arguably Patricia Highsmith's finest, The Price of Salt is the story of Therese Bellevet, a stage designer trapped in a department store day job, whose salvation arrives one day in the form of Carol Aird, an alluring suburban housewife in the throes of a divorce. They fall in love and set out across the United States, pursued by a private investigator who eventually blackmails Carol into a choice between her daughter and her lover. And then it says, with this reissue, The Price of Salt may finally be recognized as a major 20th century American novel. Those are my queer book recommendations for the month of June, Pride Month. I hope you enjoyed them. I hope there was something on this list that interested you. I hope I gave you enough variety to choose from. Yes. I was gonna say go out and be proud. I mean, go out and be proud, but also thank you for being here. If you enjoyed this video, you can give it a thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel if you want to see more bookish content from me in the future. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you all again next week with another video. Bye!